Chapter 19 Soul Fusion Skill, Empyreal Net. This was an entire team composed of 3 students above the 20th rank. Just how had they not obtained first in their original area? This was also the first team formed by 3 Soul Grandmasters that Huo Yuao's team had met. Huang Chuchen's team of 3 were indeed strong, but they just so happened to meet an enemy in their original area that had perfectly restrained them. Hence, they'd ended up with 4 wins and 1 loss, relegating them to the 33rd area. Wang Dong flew out as soon as the match started. As his beautiful radiant butterfly goddess wings unfurled, the twin girls in front of him were starstruck. The way they looked at Wang Dong immediately changed. Huang Chuchen let out a low roar and he suddenly took large strides to meet Wang Dong head-on. As his feet landed on the ground, they unexpectedly caused deep booms to ring out. When he was only 3 meters away from Wang Dong, he suddenly leapt towards Wang Dong and smashed his fists straight towards him. Wang Dong folded his wings together, forcefully receiving the blow. Bang! Huang Chuchen was unexpectedly the one forced back towards the ground. When he landed, he took a few steps back to steady his body. After steadying himself, he immediately leapt back into the air and headed straight towards Wang Dong again. At that moment, a large, pitch-black cauldron soundlessly appeared at the summit of Huang Chuchen's leap. He basically looked like he was purposefully trying to smash himself into it. Huang Chuchen was somewhat stunned. He couldn't borrow any force to change direction midair, thus he couldn't change the direction of his jump once he was in the air. In a moment of helplessness, he had no choice but to smash the large cauldron away instead. Strangely, the large cauldron moved 30 centimeters backwards just as his movements changed, allowing it to sidestep his fist, before it instantly charged forwards. However, Huang Chuchen was still relatively strong. By angling his body forwards, he unexpectedly managed to shake the 3 live Soul Crush cauldron. Bang! Huang Chuchen was sent flying backwards, while the 3 live Soul Crush cauldron descended from the sky and landed beside Wang Dong. This was the first time that Xiao Xiao had made a move during the freshman assessment. As the proctor of the match, Wang Yan's eyes lit up. He'd naturally been able to see just how extraordinary Xiao Xiao's martial soul was, which made him seriously evaluate Xiao Xiao's ability to grasp key moments in a battle. Wang Dong turned to Xiao Xiao and smiled. I was just testing his strength. This guy's martial soul should be the extremely tough Herculean ape. No wonder he's so strong. After saying this, he leapt back into the air. He toe-tapped the 3 live Soul Crush cauldron with his toes on his way back up, and his first soul ring lit up. Huang Chuchen, let's see whether or not your toughness can withstand my wing guillotine. Extending his wings, he charged towards his opponent. As Wang Dong flew towards his opponent, Lan Susu and Lan Luoluo stopped looking towards him. Instead, the pair looked at each other and clasped their hands. An even stronger soul force, undulation immediately erupted from them. Their 10 or so meters of blue hair instantly flew into the air, forming a large net in midair that flew towards Wang Dong. Using a net to confront a butterfly was clearly the best method available to them. Hairnet, this was a soul skill that both of the twins possessed as their first soul skill. When the 2 identical soul skills were used together via the connection between their spirits to form a large blue net that enshrouded Wang Dong, Huo Yuao's spiritual detection unexpectedly couldn't sense any gaps in it. Huang Chuchen's figure rapidly retreated into the net of hair, which seemed to possess a pair of eyes, as it let him pass through without even touching him. The situation that Huo Yuao had been most worried about had occurred. Their opponents consisted of a team of 1 assault system soul master and 2 control system soul masters. Furthermore, the 2 control system soul masters had even turned out to be twins, which naturally meant that the connection between the 2 of them was deeper. At this moment, the overbearing might of Wang Dong's guillotine wing showed itself. The hairnet was originally meant to suppress his butterfly-type martial soul, but when he waved his guillotine wing, its sharp edge emitted a terrifyingly destructive power. 2 enormous bluish golden blades danced about, unexpectedly tearing a hole in the large net. He used the opportunity he'd made to instantly dive down towards Huang Chuchen with the aid of Huo Yuao's spiritual detection sharing. Huang Chuchen and the 2 sisters were astonished. They hadn't expected the destructive strength of Wang Dong's radiant butterfly goddess to be this great. Moreover, they didn't understand how Wang Dong could have known exactly where Huang Chuchen was, despite his vision being blocked by the hairnet. Huang Chuchen let out a loud roar, his first soul ring instantly lighting up. The size of his fists suddenly doubled, and they shone with a strong metallic luster. After he did this, he met Wang Dong's guillotine wing head-on. While this was happening, the Lan sisters released their hairnets in an attempt to trap him from behind. Dong! When Wang Dong's guillotine wing slammed into his metallic fists, a hard sound unexpectedly rang out. Huang Chuchen was forced back once again. He stumbled backwards 5 or 6 steps before he steadied himself. Fresh blood dripped off his fists, which had been cut open. Huang Chuchen's expression changed. His Herculean ape was a relatively tyrannical martial soul, but was widely known as one that possessed both extremely tough skin as well as extraordinary strength. However, it had actually been unable to block Wang Dong's wings. It wasn't because he was weaker than Wang Dong, but because of how terrifyingly sharp Wang Dong's guillotine wing was. If he hadn't retreated, his fists might have been seriously injured. After using a single slash to force Huang Chuchen back, Wang Dong's might had flourished even more. He flapped his rear wings, allowing him to adjust his posture, then proceeded to rapidly whirl his wings, causing his guillotine wing to resemble a spinning top as it tore apart the hairnet that was approaching him from behind. Xiao Xiao could naturally sense Wang Dong's current condition via Huo Yuao's spiritual detection sharing. Because of this, she didn't make any other moves with her 3 live Soul Crush cauldron. Roar! Huang Chuchen let out another angry roar. He clasped his hands and raised them above his head, causing his second soul ring to finally light up. A dense layer of yellow light filled his body. This time his arms expanded, causing his strong muscles to be filled with a terrifying strength. The yellow light continued to circulate until it reached his fists, where it finally stopped. Power cannon! Huang Chuchen shouted, suddenly sending his fists smashing towards Wang Dong. A condensed yellow ball of light instantly shot out from his fists towards Wang Dong. This ball of light unexpectedly had a lock-on ability, as Wang Dong was unable to shake it off after dodging it 3 times. As he prepared to use the guillotine wing to block the ball of light, the hint of a smile suddenly appeared on Wang Dong's face. He surprisingly chose to give up on blocking it, instead choosing to ignore the power cannon entirely. He turned over and flew downwards, straight towards the Lan sisters, as he continued to tear the hairnet apart. The 3 live Soul Crush cauldron soundlessly appeared behind Wang Dong when he did this, fiercely smashing into the power cannon. The instant that the 2 collided, a black halo was diffused from the 3 live Soul Crush cauldron, causing a deafening rumble to echo out in midair. When the power cannon collided with the black halo of light, a large part of it was immediately crippled. Although its explosive force was enough to send the 3 live Soul Crush cauldron flying when it smashed into the cauldron, Huang Chuchen's attack was finally neutralized. Furthermore, the Lan sisters were currently facing Wang Dong's all-out attack. The Lan sisters had clearly underestimated their opponents. Although Huang Chuchen was at a disadvantage when fighting Wang Dong, he hadn't been defeated. However, they'd forgotten that Wang Dong wasn't by himself, as Wang Dong flew straight towards them while staring apart their hairnets. They realized that they didn't have enough time to use their second soul skills anymore, as there needed to be a certain amount of distance between the 2 parties for its greatest might to be unleashed. The sisters glanced at each other, a determined look appearing in their eyes. The soul rings on the 2 girls' bodies simultaneously disappeared, and they suddenly unclasped their hands. Next, they unexpectedly opened their arms and hugged each other. Wang Dong was stunned for a moment. What were they trying to do? The Lan sisters answered his question a moment later. They instantly released an undulation of soul force that greatly exceeded that of the previous one. The instant that they embraced each other, a blue halo of light was released from their bodies, which encapsulated them and made it impossible to see them clearly. At the same time, their long hair flew into the air and turned a shade of sparkling blue. Their hairnets were still as thin as before, but the feeling that they gave Wang Dong as they tried to cover him this time was entirely different. His guillotine wing cut into it again, but it wasn't cut through instantly like it had been before. Wang Dong felt as if he'd smashed into an extremely flexible and durable net. No matter how much he struggled, the net got smaller and smaller around him. The instant that the large net completely covered him, Huo Yuao's spiritual detection sharing unexpectedly disappeared. Could Huo Yuao have stopped the skill? The answer to that was obviously no. The reason behind Wang Dong's current predicament was due to the fact that this soul skill was simply too strong, so much so that its enormous soul force undulations had allowed it to forcefully block out Huo Yuao's spiritual detection. No matter how you looked at it, Huo Yuao was still only a one-ring soul master after all. In what seemed to be an instant, Wang Dong had become a dumpling trapped within the net of hair. The sparkling strands of blue hair had surrounded him completely. However, the omnipresent strands of hair didn't simply stop here. Instead, they rapidly flew towards Xiao Xiao and Huo Yuao to entrap them as well. A soul fusion skill. Xiao Xiao let out a surprised cry. She quickly unleashed an all-out attack with the three-live soul crush cauldron. The large cauldron split into three smaller cauldrons in midair, before smashing into the large web. This so-called soul fusion skill was a combined skill that could be unleashed by two soul masters who had extremely congenial martial souls. Hence, the power of a soul fusion skill far exceeded that of any soul skill of the same rank. It was an existence that was no longer on the same level as other soul skills. On the other hand, a soul fusion skill could only be unleashed by an extremely small number of soul masters. Finding two compatible soul masters was as difficult as finding a needle in a haystack. Huang Chuchen was naturally the strongest individual on his team, but their team's true trump card was the soul fusion skill that the Lan sisters could use. During their previous matches, they'd made sure to patiently restrain themselves. They went so far as to not use their soul fusion skill, even if it meant losing a match. However, this was the first match of the 5th round. They couldn't afford to lose anymore. Huo Yuao's team was class 1 seeded team. Likewise, Huang Chuchen and the Lan sisters were class 7 seeded team. Their duty was to gun for the top 3 spots. Because of this, the Lan sisters had decided to embrace each other and activate the Empyreal net only after considering it for a brief moment. Don't even mention a 2-ring soul grandmaster. Even a 3-ring soul elder wouldn't be able to escape from the Empyreal net if he was all by himself. When the Empyreal net swallowed up the 3 black cauldrons, Xiao Xiao let out a frail cry, causing 3 simultaneous rumbling sounds to ring out from within the Empyreal net. The Empyreal net unexpectedly shook a little bit. This was the skill that had previously blocked Huang Chuchen's soul skill. The 3 live soul crush cauldron's first soul skill, Cauldron Quake. Its activation this time around differed from its previous usage. This time, Cauldron Quake was simultaneously used by all 3 cauldrons, causing its strength to be fully released. The secret behind Xiao Xiao's 3 live soul crush cauldron lay here. When the 3 cauldrons were fused together, their defensive capabilities were at their greatest. When the 3 cauldrons were separated, their attacking capabilities and soul skills power were at their greatest. However, the Empyreal net was still a soul fusion skill. Although Xiao Xiao's all-out Cauldron Quake was extremely strong, it paled in significance to the Empyreal net. After a slight tremble, the Empyreal net continued to fly towards Xiao Xiao, appearing before her in an instant. At this moment, Huo Yua suddenly shouted, "Wang Dong!" The Empyreal net, which had already neared Xiao Xiao, suddenly stopped, as if it had been intimidated by Huo Yua's voice. A strong bluish golden light suddenly lit up from within the depths of the Empyreal net. Huo Yua's mental detection sharing had been activated the whole time. Although it was currently being blocked by the Empyreal net, Xiao Xiao still felt the strengthening effect of his mental detection sharing. Suddenly, to her astonishment, the originally wide-range mental detection sharing suddenly narrowed down and pierced straight into the heart of the Empyreal net in the instant that Huo Yua shouted. Not only that, but Huo Yua's soul force undulations seemed to be rapidly rising, along with an incomprehensible force that seemed to be mixed in with it. Afterwards, Xiao Xiao felt as if something had swept over her mind, causing a wave of dizziness to overcome her. Following that, the omnipresent Empyreal net collapsed, like it had been washed away by the tide. Putong, as Wang Dong landed, he took a few deep breaths. Evidently he'd been severely drained. On the other hand, the Lan sisters had been left in an even worse condition. They'd already fainted and were lying on the ground. Huo Yua's face was now extremely pale. He was so tired that he couldn't even maintain his mental detection sharing. Although he wasn't as out of breath as Wang Dong, his chest was unceasingly moving up and down. Wang Yan, who was still overlooking the arena, looked on with an inconceivable look in his eyes. When the Lan sisters had activated their Empyreal net, his eyes had already been filled with astonishment. He'd originally thought that Huo Yua's team was destined to lose, but he never expected the dramatic change that had just occurred. Just as the Empyreal net was about to defeat its opponents and obtain victory for Huang Chuchen's team, Huo Yua's team had unexpectedly managed to flip heaven and earth around in an instant. Wang Yan was depressed by the fact that he'd been unable to see how Huo Yua's team had made their move. This was especially true for Huo Yua himself. From his pale expression and his previous yell, it was evident that he'd made a move. Furthermore, it was highly likely that breaking the Empyreal net was something that he'd achieved by going all out. However, in what way had he made a move? And how had he broken a soul fusion skill? Wang Yan just couldn't see how he'd managed to do it. However, the battle hadn't ended yet. Although Huang Chuchen had been greatly astonished by the fact that they weren't able to defeat their opponents, he quickly returned to his senses. He pounced towards Wang Dong, who was the closest to him, and let out a low roar. From his point of view, it must have been Wang Dong who'd broken their soul fusion skill. Huo Yua merely had a 10-year soul ring, so he wouldn't attract any attention under normal circumstances. At this moment, Wang Dong was nearly exhausted. As he looked at the approaching Huang Chuchen, he forcefully flapped his wings backwards in retreat. He shouted, "Xiao Xiao, I'm counting on you. Leave it to me." Xiao Xiao humped, causing the 3 live soul crush cauldron that he'd separated to attack the Empyreal net to remerge. Although she didn't have the assistance of Huo Yua's mental detection, Huang Chuchen's objective was obvious. The large cauldron shifted horizontally, placing itself in front of Wang Dong's body in order to block Huang Chuchen's way. On the other hand, Huo Yua immediately sat down in a cross-legged position behind Xiao Xiao, attempting to recover his mental energy by meditation. His earlier move had drained him by a considerable amount. Fortunately, he was no longer the rookie that he'd previously been at the 11th or 12th rank. His purple demon eyes had also experienced a qualitative leap, which was why his energy hadn't been completely depleted. However, that move of his had caused waves of dizziness to fill his mind. Thus, he was no longer able to simultaneously maintain both his mental detection and his mental sharing. He needed to rest for a while. For someone to break a soul fusion skill with Huo Yua's strength, that was obviously impossible. He was still only a 1-ring soul master. Although his million-year soul ring was strong, he was still far away from being able to use the true might of the Sky Dream Iceworm. The reason that he'd been able to destroy the Empyreal net was a combination of many factors. Of them, Huo Yua had played the most crucial role. When he'd shouted Wang Dong's name, the latter had immediately understood him, and had released his second soul skill while the Empyreal net was unceasingly contracting. Wang Dong's second soul skill was naturally unable to destroy a soul fusion skill by itself, but don't forget that Wang Dong's second soul skill was from a 1,000-year soul ring, which meant that its strength was considerably higher than normal. Although it couldn't destroy the Empyreal net, it was still able to rapidly increase the Lan sisters' soul force consumption. Following that, it was time for Huo Yua's attack. Since the Empyreal net blocked his mental detection, he focused it in one direction. This allowed his strong mental undulations to overcome the Empyreal net and for it to penetrate through it. However, this was in one direction only. When he found the Lan sisters, he immediately released his spirit shock skill that was also amplified by his purple demon eyes at full power. The dizziness that Xiao Xiao had felt had been caused by Huo Yua's all-out attack. The facts showed that Huo Yua's all-out effort had succeeded. The Lan sisters' soul fusion skill was sufficiently strong, but it wasn't flawless. Its greatest flaw lay in the fact that their cultivation levels were just barely sufficient to utilize it. Hence, they weren't able to maintain it for a long time. After Wang Dong had drained them with his soul skill, Huo Yua's sudden spirit shock had struck their minds. The strong mental undulations had instantly collapsed their skill, while the large backlash from their soul fusion skill had immediately knocked them out. Despite this, the Lan sisters had been able to almost completely rid Huo Yua and Wang Dong of their combat capabilities. From this, it could be seen just how strong a soul fusion skill was. Huo Yua seemed very weak, but he had a million-year soul ring. Huang Chuchen's hands viciously slammed into the 3 live soul crush cauldron. This was his first soul skill, the vigorous King Kong fist. Boom! His metallic fist slammed into a black halo, instantly sending the 3 live soul crush cauldron 3 meters away. However, Huang Chuchen stood unmoving in his original spot, his body violently shaking for a moment. Xiao Xiao's Cauldron Quake had a strong stunning effect. It wasn't only capable of hurting her opponents. All enemies within a 1-meter radius of the 3 live Soul Crush Cauldron would be stunned on impact. Once Huang Chuchen was stunned, Xiao Xiao coldly snorted and clasped her hands together, causing the 3 live Soul Crush Cauldron to instantly split into 3, trapping Huang Chuchen in the middle. The stun effect only lasted a short while. As such, Huang Chuchen quickly regained his senses after a short while. This time, he didn't immediately make a move. He decided to pause for a moment in order to observe the situation in front of him. The Lan sisters had already fainted, resulting in them losing all of their combat capabilities. On the other hand, Wang Dong and Huo Yua seemed to have lost their fighting capabilities as well, but they were still conscious. As a result of this, it wasn't certain when they'd be able to rejoin the battle. Only a blitzkrieg strategy would would give Huang Chuchen's team a chance of obtaining victory in this assessment. Once he'd finished thinking about this, Huang Chuchen let out a loud roar. He suddenly stamped his feet, causing his body to quickly ascend. Meanwhile, he clasped his hands above his head, his second soul ring lighting up. Power cannon was activated once again. Xia gestured inwards with her hands, immediately causing the three cauldrons to simultaneously rise upwards and strike inwards. The strength of Huang Chuchen's power cannon was extraordinary. As a result, she absolutely couldn't let him release it. However, Huang Chuchen let out a cunning smile. His body suddenly flipped around in midair, turning his body upside down before the three cauldrons could converge. He swung his clasped fists with all his strength, causing a ball of yellow light to immediately shoot towards Xia. When fighting an enemy, one has to consider their own safety. Huang Chuchen didn't believe that Xia was willing to go through mutual destruction. As long as she returned her 3 lives soul crush cauldron to protect herself, he'd have a chance to approach her. Then, the opportunity to win would present itself to him. Indeed, Huang Chuchen's plan was extremely clever. If Xia wanted to defend herself against his power cannon, she'd have to merge her 3 cauldrons. And if that happened, Huang Chuchen would have enough time to approach the trio. No matter who he decided to attack, they'd definitely have a hard time resisting him. However, he suddenly felt as if his eyesight had gone bad the instant before he made his move. His power cannon had been released, but it had actually been sent out in the wrong direction. The yellow ball of light was accompanied by an explosive sound as it flew outwards at a tilted angle and blasting the examination area's partitioning walls to smithereens. The students from the neighboring area, who were currently undergoing their assessment, couldn't help but look towards their direction with an astonished expression. And at this moment, the victor of the match between Huo Yuao's team and Huang Chuchen's team was decided. Xiao's 3 cauldrons merged back into one in preparation to protect her. However, after the large, remerged cauldron had flown back several meters, it swept back and viciously struck Huang Chuchen's body. After Xiao's second soul ring lit up, Huang Chuchen was enshrouded by a black halo and was sent flying out of the arena. Wang Yan stretched his arm out to catch him, thus he wasn't sent flying even further. That black light unceasingly lingered on his body. It took a full 3 seconds for Huang Chuchen to regain the ability to move. This was the second soul skill of Xiao's 3 lives soul crush cauldron, Cauldron Sweep. When Cauldron Sweep was used against a single opponent, it wouldn't only hurt them via the collision, it would also sweep them away while simultaneously stunning him. Hence, it could be considered a control type skill. Relying on these 2 skills, Xia was definitely worthy of calling herself a control system soul master. Xia naturally hadn't been able to predict that her opponent's attack would deviate from its original target. The reason why she changed from a defensive state to an offensive one was because she once more received Huo Yuao's assistance. Only, she didn't know that Huo Yua had simultaneously released 3 soul skills in that instant, and that these 3 soul skills had finally consumed the last of his soul force. Of these 3 skills, the one he'd never before used in a battle was spiritual interference, which was an area of effect skill. Compared to spirit shock, spiritual interference seemed much weaker. However, don't forget that it was an area of effect skill. Furthermore, its effects were very subtle when it was activated. As a result of this, enemies would often be unaware that it had affected them. Otherwise, how could Huang Chuchen's locked-on power cannon deviate from its target? Wang Yan said, Huo Yuao's team wins. While he spoke, he placed Huang Chuchen, who was at a loss, back on the ground. Afterwards, he followed him to the Land Sisters and used his soul force to awaken them. After the Land Sisters had awakened, they felt a splitting headache. It was as if 10,000 needles were pricking their brains. Huo Yuao's spirit shock had become much stronger than before. Even the 6-ring Ma Xiaotao had been slightly affected, let alone the 2 of them. Combined with the backlash from their soul fusion skill, Huang Chuchen's team could be said to have suffered a great loss from this match. Lan Susu and Lan Luoluo definitely wouldn't be able to recover their combat strength today. However, they still had 4 more matches today. On the other hand, Huo Yuao's team was in a much better situation compared to their opponents. Fortunately, they'd obtained a victory. Furthermore, Wang Dong and Huo Yua had only been drained of their soul force. They hadn't been injured. They could recuperate for 2 matches worth of time, at the very least. However, Xia would have to become the main strength of the team during the following matches. While Wang Dong supported the weak Huo Yua as he walked to the side of the arena, Xia followed them and suspiciously asked, Class monitor, why did his attack miss? Huo Yua smiled bitterly. Let's not talk about this right now. We should hurry and meditate to restore our soul force. Our first match has drained us by this much, yet we still have 4 more matches today. We can only pray that everyone else was drained this much as well. After speaking, he immediately sat in a cross-legged position to begin meditating. It wasn't just Xia who was puzzled. Wang Dong was slightly puzzled as well, but unlike Xia, he found it strange that the Land Sisters' fusion skill had been broken so easily. If they were only able to maintain their fusion skill for such a short time, was there any point in them using it? The answer was definitely no. However, they'd still used it, and it had in turn quickly been shattered by his 1,000-year soul skill. Furthermore, they'd even been knocked unconscious. Just what was going on? When he thought about Huo Yuao's shout, he felt something wrong in his heart. However, he couldn't place what was wrong. There were a total of 16 participating in the assessment, so the second match began immediately after Huo Yuao's match had ended. The later stages of the freshman examination had started from the point that the student redistribution happened. This was also the most important period of time for teams to fight for points. Every extra victory represented an extra possibility of staying. As a result, every team present had already begun to give each match their all. The previous match between Huo Yuao's team and Huang Chuchen's team had greatly astonished the other 4 teams. After asking themselves whether they had that kind of strength, they came to the conclusion that naturally had to do their utmost while competing with the other teams. The first match had basically ended up with both sides receiving damage, so this group's examination became increasingly complicated. All 3 matches in the examination's first round quickly ended, with the results being just as Huo Yua had wished for it to be. The other 4 teams had wasted a considerable amount of energy. After all, they weren't just drained from today's matches, they'd used a large amount of energy during the previous day's 4 matches as well. They hadn't recovered enough energy to be in their optimum state to begin with. As this arena-seeded team, Huo Yuao's trio was the first to enter the stage when the second round began. This time, their opponents were 3 students from Class 4. After their opponents introduced themselves, they took their places. On Huo Yuao's side, their positioning had clearly changed. Xia was standing in the front, while Huo Yua stood behind her. On the other hand, the assault system Wang Dong stood at the very back. Furthermore, Huo Yua and Wang Dong had already sat down on the ground before Wang Yan had even announced the start of the battle. They were actually meditating in the arena. This was the task that Huo Yua had entrusted to them. They had to do their best to recover all of their depleted soul force. The possibility of them winning every match in the round-robin tournament only existed if Wang Dong's cultivation was restored to its optimum state. Good luck, Xiao. Huo Yua whispered. Don't worry, class monitor. We can definitely do this. Following Wang Yan's announcement, the assessment began with both parties simultaneously releasing their martial souls. After observing their previous matches, Huo Yua's trio knew that their opponents consisted of 3 agility system soul masters. They all walked down the path of speed. When Wang Yan announced the start of the match, the 3 opposing soul masters simultaneously charged out while releasing their martial souls. They 3 of them went different directions, all of them charging towards Xiao at the same time. They already noticed that Wang Dong was meditating on the ground. When their enemy's strongest assault system soul master seemed to have no combat strength at all, how could they give up the opportunity presented to them? Although they'd expended a large amount of energy earlier, they still decided to go all out. Wang Yan stood to the side of the arena, not relaxing even a little bit as he kept his eyes carefully trained on Huo Yua. He believed that Xiao alone wouldn't be able to beat 3 opponents without Wang Dong's help. After all, their opponents were 3 agility type soul masters. He definitely had to see how Huo Yua would make a move, as well as how he would release his soul skill. Huo Yua's eyes lit up. Although the faintly golden light in his eyes wasn't especially clear, Wang Yan managed to see it clearly. However, a change in one's eye color when they released their martial soul was extremely common for soul masters. Wang Yan also noticed the presence of the seemingly weak white soul ring below his feet, yet he still wasn't able to tell what Huo Yua's martial soul was. At that moment, the 3 agility system soul masters cauldrons had already made their move. The three moved in three different directions, and their speeds were varied. Two of them pounced towards Xia Xiao, while the third circled around her in an attempt to launch a sneak attack on Huo Yuao. They were relatively well coordinated. Xia Xiao's gaze was fixed on the area in front of her from the beginning, as if she was completely ignoring them. She then raised her hands above her head, making it look as if she was supporting the heavens. The three live soul crush cauldron instantly rose up and separated into three, which simultaneously flew out to meet her three opponents. A mind-blowing scene occurred. Without even using her eyes to see what was going on, Xia Xiao blocked the paths of the three agility system soul masters, using her cauldron that had separated into three. The three agility system soul masters were all at the pinnacle of One Ring soul masters. They were all around rank 19. They'd gone all out, so their movement speed was extremely quick. As a result of this, they simply weren't able to change their movements fast enough. Thus, all three collided with the three cauldrons. They naturally weren't as strong as Huang Chuchen, who possessed the Herculean 8 beast doll. After colliding with the three live soul crush cauldrons, they were immediately sent into a confused state. Furthermore, an even more shocking scene occurred in the back of the arena. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.